Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. So in the last video, we saw how to create classes and we looked at class methods and things like that. And we created this person object. In fact, I'm going to go down here. And we created this person that has all these fields and everything. And what we want to do now is look at subclassing. So all this stuff exists inside of the person class. But now what if you were like, you know what? I have a person, but now I want to create an employee, and an employee is a type person, but an employee has a few separate things that we need to keep track of, like an employee number and a hire date or something like that. So how do I actually do that? Like, I could create a new class now, and I could call this new class. I'm going to define it right underneath this file just to make things easier, so we don't have to use import statements, but just as a record. If you were going to have multiple classes, you should probably have them in separate files. A lot of people are very particular about that. And then you would import whatever class you needed. But for right now, I don't want to have to deal with the complexity of importing to throw anybody off that may just be getting started. So we're going to create an employee class. And now in order to actually to be a subclass of person, we have to actually pass in the person class by saying person, which is right here. So now if I say person class and person, and then we're going to do a define init file, and then this is going to be self, and then we're going to say self, and then we'll just say employee ID, and then we'll just say self.employee ID equals employee ID. All right, so now we have this employee ID on the class person, which ends up subclassing, or employee, I'm sorry, and this is the name of the class, and its subclass is person. Now, one of the things that's going to end up tripping us up here is that if you notice person, when you instantiate a person object, you have to pass in data like name, hair color, and height. Or at least it expects you to do that, because that way it has all that information already defined from within the class. So if I were to run this without that, you could say it's missing the 3 required arguments: name, hair color, blah, blah, blah. So let me do a Control Z to bring all that stuff back. And I can create a Chris class, no problem. Now it's not going to do anything, but it didn't throw any errors, so that's fine. So now what if I said Chris, or I'll just say Billy the employee equals, and then we're going to say employee. And then here we say the start dates, or I'm sorry, employee ID. We'll just say A123. All right, so now let's go ahead and we'll just create another method on this that says print employee ID, and it's going to be self. Say print self.employee ID. So if any of this stuff doesn't make sense, make sure you see the video just prior to this one where we were talking about classes and methods. Right, so now if I were to do this, I'm going to then say Billy the employee dot print employee ID, call the parenthesis, and I'm going to run this. You can see it prints A123. But now how does Billy get information from like print name and all this stuff? How can I print Billy's name? I didn't actually assign a name to Billy. So what happens when we want to then say Billy the employee? Because the purpose of subclassing is that you're supposed to be able to get all the functionality that you need from the class that you subclassed from the lower class. So you can see it's subclassing person, so it should have all of person's functionality from within the employee object. But here inside the Billy the employee, if I were to say Billy the employee, sorry I didn't type that out, Billy the employee dot print, you can see it actually finds like print hair color. But here's the problem when we go to run it. We created a employee class here, and those values only get assigned when we actually create a person class. So that is a problem. So let me just get rid of that so there's no confusion. We created an employee class. It has all the functionality of the person class, but the person class needed you to pass in data that it gets assigned that then gets used from within its methods. And here we referenced a method that existed in the person class, but but the value wasn't there. So it says there's no object attribute named hair color. So how do we fix this problem? Now, in order to do this, there's a new feature in Python 3 called super. And super is supposed to be able to take any number of arguments and apply it to parent classes so that it fulfills the parent class contract, essentially. So I could use the super keyword, but we haven't touched upon a few things like keyword args and args within Python in order for me to really address that in this video. So instead, I'm going to use an alternate implementation that some people say is better, including some guy named Martin. I can't ever pronounce his last name, but he's from the UK, and the guy is the most highly upvoted Python answerer on Stack Overflow. He hates the super keyword, and but basically the super keyword is some magic that is performed within Python 3 to solve this type of problem. And the reason why we want to get into that is because it's important when you run along with that. And some people in the community say that it is sufficient and they use it and you see it used in projects, but we're not there yet. And you can get by just fine without using it. So let's go ahead and look at how we would solve that from within our person class. And what we would end up doing is we would have to implement, and this is the part that kind of sucks, we have to change employee to accept all the parameters that person needed when it got instantiated. So we would say name, what's the second one? Hair color and height. Hair color and height. And then from within here, we would actually say person.init. And we would then have to pass in name, hair color, height. So that kind of sucks because this is where we have to explicitly say, okay, employee has to pass in all this crap. Even though these three things are used by the parent class, this is the only thing specific to employee. But I need these init values to be passed on to this so that these methods work. So I could now do this, and now employee, when we instantiate it, we need to pass in that stuff. So we're going to say Chris Hawks, Brown 6'1", and my employee number. So now when I do this, let's go ahead and run it. Sorry guys, oversight. We need to actually pass in self to the parent init as well. Sorry about that. So we're going to pass in self here. This is why the super keyword was created, to be honest with you. But now it works. And guys, I'll admit this is not the most ideal thing, and it was the reason why super was created. I can't explain super right now without getting too complicated. We've already gotten into some pretty complicated stuff in the last couple videos here, and I don't want to lose you on something as stupid as the super keyword. So this is how you would manually solve the problem that super is trying to solve for everybody. And what super does still falls short in some sense, because people like Martin, who is like I said, the highest upvoted Python person in the entire world on Stack Overflow, says don't use super, use it this way. Explicitly and verbosely write it out so that there's no magic going on. Everybody knows what the hell is going on. The weird thing about this compared to other stuff is just simply the fact that when you're calling init, you have to pass in self, that's the weirdness, because normally when you just instantiate a class, you don't have to pass in self. But in this one particular example, you did, and that's where I feel like I really might confuse you guys. So hopefully you guys can just watch this video a few times. If you ever run along this situation in the future, you guys know you can come back, hopefully, and try to get filled in on that information. Now, a lot of times the init is going to have a bunch of different functionality. It's not going to be just assigning parameters. It might even be making database calls. It could be doing stuff like reaching across the web. You never know what is being done in this init file. So that's why sometimes it's better to call it this way, because if in this case we're just assigning values and it's very easy to just basically replicate it, we could comment out this line and I could actually self-assign all this stuff, like self name equals name, self dot hair color equals hair color, and self dot height equals height. And now, because we're assigning all these values from within the employee class, it would still work. It would work the same way that it did before without having to call the init. But the reason why it's important to do it the other way and not do this verbose way, like I said, of duplicating the functionality is, number one, you're duplicating functionality. Number two, if there's a lot of shite going on inside the init, then you don't want to have to duplicate all that stuff in every class that you use just because you're subclassing. So a lot of information there to swallow. I know it is, guys. Let me know what you think. Hopefully I've explained this relatively well. And please subscribe, please share, please upvote. Thanks. Bye. Hey guys, so a lot of you ask me, how do I get my foot in the door to become a programmer? And I just want to take a moment to mention Dev Mountain Coding Bootcamp is a 12-week intensive course that focuses on the technologies of the here and now for web development. Some of the things that they're actually teaching in this 12-week course, it's geared to get you into the industry by focusing on things like jQuery, Node.js, React, Angular, how to use GitHub. So a lot of the things that you're going to need to do as a developer, as soon as you start, they're going to be teaching you in this coding bootcamp. And the entire goal is to be able to get you into the industry within 12 weeks. So if you guys are interested in learning more information about Dev Mountain Coding Bootcamp, just check out the link in the description tab of this video. Thank you for watching and have a good day.